Begin with that breaking news because it has been revealed that the personal details of UK special forces and spies were included in the huge data leak that resulted in thousands of Afghans being secretly relocated to the UK. Well, the latest revelations showed that details of more than 100 MI6 spies, SAS and special forces personnel were also in that spreadsheet that was emailed outside of the government by a defence official in error. On Tuesday, an unprecedented super-injunction was lifted, and we learned that the leaked database contained the personal information of nearly 19,000 Afghans who'd worked with the British during the 20-year conflict in Afghanistan and had applied to be resettled to the UK after the Taliban retook control in 2021. Well, the latest detail on the scale of the security breach was kept under wraps by an injunction until today, when the gagging order was lifted, in part by a High Court judge. The names were in a spreadsheet that was emailed outside of the government back in February 2022. The Ministry of Defence became aware of that breach later, when the excerpts of that spreadsheet were anonymously posted on Facebook, and that was in August 2023. Well, that is the backdrop to today's development. Frank Gardner, our security correspondent, is here with me. And Frank, well, another extraordinary twist here.
Yeah, I mean, if we thought it was bad enough, the revelations that have come out in the last 2 days this week, this is even, in some ways, even more shocking because, the entire kind of shtick of working for special forces or for secret intelligence is that you try to keep your identity secret. And those names, contact details, and who knows what other details were on that, were included in that unauthorized data breach that went out not once but twice in February 22. Now, what happened here was that there was a Royal Marine who was seconded to Special Forces headquarters, or what's called the Directorate of Special Forces, at a base in London, in central London. He was tasked to check up on the applications being made by former members of Afghan Special Forces. To do that job, he contacted certain other members who were trusted. Unfortunately, in contacting them, he included an attachment that had all of these details. Now, we didn't know until today that, I mean, it was bad enough that there were these 18,700 names of Afghans on it, but also 100 sort of supposedly classified secret names which should never get out into the open were also included. Now, what that does mean is that the UK intelligence community and the Special Forces community have had since August 2023, when this was discovered, along with the rest of government, in which to mitigate the effects of this. So the people who I think who are going to be most worried about this are not really the spooks and the spook spies and Special Forces soldiers, because they've known about this for the last 2 years. It's going to be those poor, hapless 600 former Afghan soldiers and their 1,800 dependents who are still in Afghanistan.
A twin thought, though. Do we know that whether there were any consequences of their names also being on this list? And on Tuesday, we learned, when we discovered all about this, that actually the Afghans hadn't been told until Tuesday. In this case, with the spies and the SAS personnel, were they told all of that time ago?
We keep putting the question to the MOD, to the Ministry of Defence. Has anybody been arrested, tortured, killed, captured, whatever, as a result of this? And they've said they don't know, or they don't have a handle on that. There is a discrepancy here. There is a gap between one version, which is being very much sort of put forward by the MOD, that, look, the Taliban know what they know, so there's nothing to see here in a way. And also the Taliban Interior Ministry spokesman saying yesterday, no, we offered an amnesty, nothing to see here. But the Daily Telegraph has spoken to two senior Taliban officials who they say have said, actually, we've had this list since 2022, and yeah, we are working our way through it. So this is extremely worrying, not just for those 2,400 Afghan people involved whose names are linked to this list, who are still in Afghanistan, but their relatives back here in the UK and in the wider Afghan diaspora. So this story just gets worse and worse.
Frank, thank you so much for that. Let's continue with this. Let's speak to the former commander of UK and NATO forces, Hamish de Bretton-Gordon. He also writes for the Daily Telegraph. And Hamish, you were listening to all of that. This is all new information. When you hear what we've heard in the last little while, what do you make of it?
Well, I think, first of all, it really shows how important that super-injunction was, and people should understand it, that now that we know, quite apart from all the Afghans who have been identified by this data leak, our security services and also our special forces. And as Frank said, they've had a few years to make sure that they can mitigate it. But I expect a lot of these people are still operative, and the special forces and our security services are absolutely crucial for the defence and security of this country. So anything that affects that is really damaging. But I think going forward, hopefully media organisations throughout this country and the world will not publish names, quite apart from the Afghans. As you said, there are still some in Afghanistan who potentially are under threat from the Taliban, but also our own security and special forces operators. We don't think that there's a threat from the Taliban in this country, but certainly we need to have our security services and special forces being able to operate without fear of being identified, because once they're identified, obviously it makes their task even more difficult, if not untenable.
Yes, you must be staggered that, in effect, all of these people have been compromised in the way they have. And what questions now do you think do need to be answered, given that the public only found out about all of this a couple of days ago?
Well, I think that there's one thing about, the public being satisfied that everything has been done to make sure that the damage is limited, and this is a few years old now. So one would assume that the government, the MOD and the security services have been working very, very hard to make sure that that is the case. And also to make sure that in future this sort of thing doesn't happen. I mean, we're in an era now where the keyboard is almost as dangerous, if not more dangerous, than other sort of weapons of war. And I suppose it's a realization that that is absolutely the case, and we must be completely scrupulous with all our dealings in this particular area. But going forward, I think I'm sure the government and all the agencies will want to make sure that they can do all they can to protect those people still in threat in Afghanistan, and also to make sure that the names of our security services and special forces are kept secret, so they can do the brilliant job that they do every day of the year to protect us in this country.
Hamish de Bretton-Gordon, we have to leave it there, but thanks for your time. Thanks for giving us that snapshot reaction to those breaking developments.